Welcome back to another episode of Sabres Chat. This is episode 22. I am Luka, of course, and this is presented by Built in Buffalo. Um, First and foremost, real quick, if you have not noticed or anything like that, there was no episode next week or last week. There will be no episode next week. I have decided to make the decision of switching this to an every other week. Just schedule's a little bit busy this time of year and everything of that nature. But then on top of it, it feels right, I guess is the way to put it. To just have this more of an every other week. It kind of allows me in a couple different ways to digest the season a little bit more, figure out, kind of just give my thoughts a little bit more of deeper kind of talk when it comes to this podcast and everything like that. So I do appreciate if you are here, if you've been a listener and everything like that. But moving forward, we are going to be in every other week. It just feels right based on my life schedule, everything of that nature. Anyways, this episode is going to be probably not a fun one, not one that I really expected to be having, especially after last Friday, where the Sabres had a what seemed to be nice 3-2 win over the Minnesota Wild at home. A game which I attended, and everything seemed to be writing it. The course seemed to be between that and overtime loss against at Carolina, a nice statement win the previous Saturday against Toronto. Things seem to be going the right direction after that Friday night game. Tonight's episode um, really took a turn for the South, though, the next night after that Friday, where Saturday, this past Saturday at Pittsburgh, they were shut out 4-0 and kind of were completely outplayed from start to finish for the most part on the ice. And then in Okposo's 1000th game, where he was clearly the best player on the ice, that's not a good sign for this team. And they were, from the mishap of the Canadian national anthem, it was over. And Boston just, I mean, controlled to be polite, dominated to be polite, absolutely showed why they are the class of the league and the Sabres are so far behind of being anywhere near something like that. And I didn't want to be overreactionary with this episode, and I didn't think that it's fair to do that. I think, we've seen in the past already with an injury to Tuck what happens to this lineup. I think, having that top tier power forward in the lineup and then also just being at full health, players fall where they're supposed to in this lineup. Um, then on top of it, in the Boston game itself, of course, the Tage Thompson injury happens. He leaves early in the first for the rest of the game, took McAvoy's skate to the top of it. It appeared to be a foot area injury, maybe related to getting cut. He comes back in the second, takes a shot off the hand, um, leaves for the rest of the game. Immediately after, Granato says he's going to miss a length of time, a serious length of time, whatever. I can't remember exactly the words used by him. And now you're looking at it where your top line center is Middlestat. Your top line becomes what was your second line that night, right? Casey Middlestat, Jordan Greenway, JJ Paterka, which honestly, as a second line, I feel okay with. Dylan Cousins is going to be sliding back into center with Jeff Skinner. You would imagine stuff like that. And it's your third, fourth line, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't even know how you'd even want to stack them at this point. Your bottom six forwards are going to be, for a regular occurrence moving forward, Zemgus Girgensons, Kyle Okposo, Peyton Krebs, Tyson Yost, Victor Olofsson, and Lucas Rusek. That's it's not good enough. It's just not. It's not good enough in the NHL to have your bottom six being that. And you're going to have to lean so heavily on your top six for scoring, it feels. and your blue line's going to have to come up with a lot of big play. And I'll get into a second when it comes to the blue line and defensively with this team. But the theme of this episode and the title of this episode, essentially is all lost, is all hope lost from here? Is this season just not working out how we hoped, how it felt like it should have, however you want to say it? And I'm going to say just first and foremost, no, it's not all hope is not lost. Um Hopefully Tage and whatever's going on with his hand, whether it's, a broken hand, of course. I don't know if any specifics are out there at this point. You would pretty much assume if it's a lengthy upper body injury, as they're calling it, and you saw the shot off the hand, that it's probably some sort of broken hand situation. Hopefully it's a speedy recovery and everything goes well with that. Hopefully Tuck is back sooner rather than later from whatever's going on with that situation. But overall, it doesn't feel good. You know, Jack Quinn, you're hoping he's going to be back in a month's time from now. As I record this, it's Wednesday, November 15th. You were thinking, December-ish was the timeline. I think the injuries, especially the one to Tage, is probably going to accelerate the process of maybe when he appears to be ready to be in the lineup. I don't think they're going to go crazy about it because it was a major injury that he suffered, unfortunately. But still, like, if you wanted to be cautious with it in the past and say, hey, the benchmark was 85 to 90%, and then we'll throw him in the lineup. Maybe they move that benchmark down to an 80% once he's at 80%. Maybe we'll throw him in and see how things go. And you would still ease him in a little bit to shake off the rust and whatnot. But maybe that benchmark of when he will be inserted to the lineup moves just due to that, because you need to get that high end scoring back into the lineup. The woes on the power play just get even worse, to be quite honest, when your best player, that is Tage Thompson, your best scorer for sure, is gone. Um, this is going to be a true test of depth and of coaching and those things that can be kind of molded over by elite talent, by elite personnel, by, rampant scoring. Not that not that Tage was setting the world on fire this year yet, but he always has that potential, of course. And it's like, he's gone. Tuck is going to come back and he's going to need, a few games to get back into game shape, we'll call it. But overall, it's been a tough stretch for Buffalo sports. um, it's a lot. The past two games for the Sabres, keeping it Sabres focused. When you're outscored 9-2, you're outworked for 120 minutes straight. Devin Levi, which I will get into in a second. Devin Levi looked absolutely lost. Devin Levi might have looked the worst that we've ever seen with him in the blue and gold. Tuesday night against the Bruins. The situation made it laughable almost in a way, where once the Sabres scored to make it 4-1, 5-1, can't even remember. I lose track at this point, to be quite honest, of that game. I wanted to forget about it sooner rather than later. I believe it was 5-1. You felt after the fifth goal for the Bruins by Lindholm at the 12:23 mark, now seeing it here, that you would pull Devin Levi. They don't. Victor Olofsson gets this goal, a few minutes later, of a rebound that Allmark honestly shouldn't be giving up in the way that he did. But then they pull him after scoring a goal. Might be the first time I can ever remember a goalie being pulled when their team scored, like in that break. Very odd timing wise, but maybe something was off with Levi. They knew about it and they finally were just like, hey, we got it back within 4 at this point where you still got a period plus. Let's get UPL in there now and see if we can close out the game. Technically the Sabres win the third period 1-0 to make it a 5-2 loss. The future doesn't look bright for this team this year. Injuries, of course, are going to happen in the National Hockey League. Injuries are going to happen to every team. but they seem to be not working out. You need a little bit of luck and fortune, and it's not working out right now. Your top end guys are just continuously getting hurt right now. Mattias Samuelson suffered another injury that kept him out of a few games. Excuse me. Earlier this season, you had now Tuck getting hurt, and he's been out the past few games. And of course, now Tage is going to be out for a significant period of time with his own. Um, apologize, a little dry throat here. I don't know what this means when it comes to the potential Kane rumors that we've been hearing. Um, to me, it definitely takes a little bit of a knock, but overall, that would be big, especially with the high end scoring potential. I'm a fan of the move if it could be done, um, especially with the rumored 2 year. I think it was like in the ballpark of 3, 4, maybe 4.5 million, something of that nature. I think I heard the rumors of. If that deal could be made and everything of that nature, and the teams that he looks to be going around and having discussions with, I believe of all the listed teams rumored out there, we are the ones in a best cap situation to facilitate something like that. Um, that would definitely boost confidence a little bit in that top end scoring, even while Tage is out. And then when things get right again later on in the season, things could really get rolling. That's great. It's early in the season where things and hope shouldn't be all lost, but it's definitely doom and gloom right now. There's nothing you can pull from these past two games, the Pittsburgh and Boston games, where you can even have any sort of confidence in this team. And you can even go before that little stretch of Minnesota, Carolina, Toronto that I kind of led this pod with. And you go back to those Philly games where even though the Philly, the last episode I talked about, it felt good about winning a game that you really kind of got outplayed. And then you come into home ice and you get outplayed again and you actually lose that game emphatically 5-1. Looked horrible. This team, going into a point that I might have hinted at earlier, just doesn't seem to have the willingness, ability, whatever it is, maybe the coaching even, to play team defense. And the blue line doesn't look to be anything defensively. I think Owen Power, he it still feels like there's too many mistakes in him night in, night out. He can still provide you that high end play, moving the puck forward. He's a great skating player, especially at his size. But defensively, he looks lost too much to be comfortable. Um, it, you need all five skaters on the ice to play defense in some regard, though. It's not all just on the blue line, and this team just doesn't have the ability to figure out. It feels, and that's where like I pull some blame off of goaltending whenever certain situations happen. Of course, Levi just looked bad, so there's no excuse in that. You would like to some of those goals you absolutely just have to have. Um, UPL looking in, whatever. UPL needs it my it's been a tough 40 to 72 hours for sports, so this conversation is definitely hurting deep. But UPL, of course, has kind of had a track record where he can step up in moments, but at the same time, he also seems to not step up in moments, especially at key times in games, and you just can't get that one extra save out of him. But in that regard, it's like, look, it's not all on them. You need the skaters in front of them to do their jobs as well, especially in the defensive zone. And the Sabres just don't show anything that makes you think that they have the ability to do so, or just the understanding to know what they're supposed to be doing position wise, where pressure is supposed to be, when to just stay in your zone, and when to understand what area of the ice you're supposed to kind of take hold of, and just understand that play could come to you and you need to make sure you stand your ground in that area. It's just they look lost, they look confused, they look like they just don't know what they're doing too much, and the puck just gets moved around them too easily, that they allow too many damn goals. And what scares me is when you lose more and more guys, especially the high end guys, to match those goals with Tage Thompson and Tuck. But Tage plays meaningful minutes on the penalty kill, and he, like, his size is something you can't replace, especially in the defensive side where he has that reach to potentially force you a little bit wider, or then also chip you off the puck because he can reach around your body. It's just it's gonna be a tough stretch coming up for this team. You look at the stretch coming up between now and when I'll probably be recording next, and you have a little bit of a road trip, which if you want to have a shining light to anything, this team just underperforms at home and performs decently enough on the road at times where it's like maybe going to Winnipeg and then Chicago and then Washington. You can win those 2 out of those 3 and turn things around. I will say this, throughout this whole stretch, the Sabres are 7-8-1. They have never lost more than 2 consecutive games this season. It has happened twice so far. The first 2 games against the New York teams, the home opener, and then at Long Island against the Islanders. And then these last 2 games at Pittsburgh and home to Boston. If you can then, Winnipeg game, don't let it get to 3. This is when you start seeing what happened last year where they go on an L8, when they lose 8 straight. And that run is, in the end, what cost you that near miss of the postseason at the end of the season. You cannot let losses stack up. So the Winnipeg game is going to be big, and that's a team that, look, for whatever you feel about them, they play well and they have a high-end goaltender. And it's a goaltender that some even out there, partially myself, you would have loved to have seen wearing the blue and gold if a move could have been made, instead of relying on a rookie goaltender to be your ace when he's never experienced the true NHL kind of schedule and just the night to night kind of work you need to put in to put wins and good performances together. It would have been nice to have that true number one. And the Winnipeg game is going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely massive for this team. And they're going to have to dig deep. We talked about the injuries. We talked about team defense just not happening. Talk about goaltending being questionable. I would honestly very much expect UPL to be in the net Friday night. It feels like it's going to be UPL in net on Friday night. Maybe you slide Levi back in on Sunday when you're at Chicago playing Connor Bedard and the Bedardettes out there in Chicago with, Taylor Hall being a top end winger for them and stuff like that. So there's games to be had, there's moments to be had, but then after that road trip, you got a home game against Pittsburgh, at New Jersey, at New York, at St. Louis, at Carolina. You come back to Nashville. It's like, this is gonna be very, very tough to close out November going into December. Those are all games. The Chicago game, I think this team, even with a couple injuries, should be able to manage. If you are any respectable team, you should be able to manage that game. But even Washington, with the veteran presence they have, and they're playing good hockey right now. I mean, Winnipeg, Washington, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, the Rangers, St. Louis is playing very good hockey. Carolina's Carolina, of course, and Nashville going into December now at that point. Carolina is also a December game for what it's worth. I mean, that is 8 opponents. Your 8 opponents coming up, 8 of your next 9 that are just tough games that you do not want to be without your guys. You need to find results even without your top end guys in these upcoming games. And I do question if they're going to be able to do that. I think, your Rusek is just not good enough. There was a little bit of intrigue with it in the preseason. It feels like already, I mean, he's going to have to play right now, but it feels like it's just not there. I don't see it there when it comes to being an NHL player, to be quite frank. Ryan Johnson, for what it's worth, I really hope post injuries and stuff, he still maintains his position on this team. I think Ryan Johnson has been great for this lineup. He worked out really well while Samuelson was out, paired up with Dahlin. I think you now have him with Eric Johnson, and that works well. I think it's just like, while Yoki Haru's out, as for, I haven't mentioned him yet, Ryan Johnson has been very, very solid. And when Yoki Haru even comes back, I would like to see Ryan Johnson sticking around. I think he's looked very, very solid. I think most see it. But man, these forwards, this is gonna be tough. I mean, you have Jack Quinn on, IR, Zach Benson still on IR, Tuck's day to day still. Tage is now out for, the foreseeable future. It's like, whoa, I don't know how well this team could match up. This is, to me, if I had to kind of put a synopsis on this and kind of summarize my feelings on the upcoming stretch with the current situation and predicament that the Sabres find themselves in, this is when you truly learn about the coaching staff. And this is when you learn about Donnie Meatballs and Don Granato. How good are you at your job? How good are you going to be to level the playing field and raise the level of play from your team in these upcoming games against the likes of the Winnipeg Jets, against the Washington? Can you still get the result you should be able to get against the Blackhawks? I mean, is that going to be a letdown game? It better not be. Like, I'll be honest, man. Like, Connor Bedard looks incredible, and he's going to be a point per game guy at the end of the season, even as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, whatever he is by the end of the year. It's he's incredible, but that still is a roster, a team that you should be able to manage and handle. Don Granato, you got a job in front of you. And I think we will learn a lot about him on, have we hit his ceiling? Is just what we keep seeing, what we're going to have. Do we need someone else? Do we need someone that is going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say conflict in a negative sense, but I'm just going to say conflict in the locker room where he, knows when to press buttons and test this roster to get more out of them? Because I do right now start to have that idea creep in my head where maybe this is just the best that Don Granato can provide this team at this point in time. And it just needs to be something better and different moving forward to get more out of this team that we believe should be able to do more. So it will be interesting coming up on how all of that goes. Going to be a lot of eyes watching that Winnipeg game. I will be watching it very closely Friday night while I am live on Bill's Chat Live, for what it's worth. Um, man, if they can even put in a fighting effort, I'll put it this way. If they can even put in a fighting effort where it's a 1-goal game, you don't see what you saw at Pittsburgh in this last home game against Boston, and you see just a good quality effort through 60 minutes, and you end up losing a 1-goal game or losing in overtime or whatever it might be, allowing an empty netter that makes it a 2-goal game. One of those kind of tight games against a good team in the Jets, I guess I would take it. I would like to see them get back to that 500 mark where, you get back to then 8-1, and you can move forward into Chicago potentially to get back up above 500. But my hope is not there in it right now. You eliminate Tage Thompson tonight. You already seen what with Tuck out, and it's hard to believe it's hard to believe that this team is really going to be able to do too much for the next, stretch of games with all of these injuries stacked up. And I don't think that's something that this team should crutch on as well. And it shouldn't be something that's used as an excuse too much, because, your Cousins is still there. Your middle stat, who's having a good year so far, is still there. Jordan Greenway on that wing with middle stat has worked out decent. JJ Peterka is still sitting on 7 goals, I believe, right now. He's looked great and he's been flying around. You can't have nights like you did with Boston where Kyle Okposo is your best guy. That can't happen ever again this season. That is unacceptable for the roster you have. Jeff Skinner, Dylan Cousins, Jordan Greenway, Casey Middlestat, your Rasmus Dahlin, who had a good night against Boston himself. He's out there being physical, throwing the body around, move the puck around decently. He did have a couple of giveaways at the blue line, but still, it's like you just need better out of those big guys. You just need better. You can't have your captain, your leader, a consummate professional in Kyle Okposo be your clear-cut best skater. That's not good enough for this roster, for this team, for the expectations that we all have moving forward for this organization. So, just a few thoughts to be had. Not a super long episode, of course. I try to keep these a little bit short. I appreciate you listening and stopping by. Feel free to give this like if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a comment how you're feeling about this team right now. Leave a comment if you feel like all hope is lost. I love interacting when I see comments. I do try to check up on it once in a while throughout the weeks while the episode is live. Like I said, I will be going to an every other week situation here, But I do hope they can turn things around. It's doom and gloom, and it doesn't look great right at this point in time. But it's amazing what a positive result can do to change kind of the psyche of us as fans, as the players in the locker room, I imagine, and everyone else. So Friday night at Winnipeg, 8 p.m. Eastern, gonna be very intrigued to see what kind of effort they put in there. And then you have a decent game against Chicago before a tough, tough, tough stretch of games following that. So thank you for listening once again to this episode of Sabres Chat. If you do not already, be sure to follow me. If you're looking, I'm pointing on the screen at Sabres Chat Pod on Twitter. I do try to kind of give my thoughts throughout the week, try to repost anything significant around the league, of course, Sabres centered and everything of that nature. If you don't already, follow at Bills Chat Pod for Bills content as well. My co-host of all my Bills Chat podcast and Bills Chat live shows, Josh, does manage that Twitter account, although I do pop in myself once in a while for all your Bills Chat stuff. Tough time for Buffalo sports again, but you know, shouldn't be new for us. This is depressing as it is to say that. This is the life we choose to live, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever it is. And I will say this: it's ride or die always. It's always been. Why stop now? Hopefully things turn around for both teams, these Sabres, of course, and the Bills. But you know, let's see how things go from here. Hopefully this is that rock bottom and things can start moving up. Um, Thanks again for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your day or evening from whenever you're listening to this. And don't forget to subscribe as well to here at the Built in Buffalo YouTube channel or the Bills Chat YouTube channel, where myself and Josh like to provide you all your Buffalo sports updates, information, podcast content, whatever you want to call it. We love doing it for you. We appreciate if you subscribe and follow along. Thank you for having the desire to intake this little bit of therapy session when it comes to the Sabres at this point in time. And I look forward to next episode on Sabres Chat presented by Built in Buffalo. You all have a great rest of your day.